Maryland football picks up a huge commitment.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you guys for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app, current account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Maryland football picks up a huge commitment in the portal, getting defensive tackle Cam Wright. You guys know how much I stress the importance of the defensive line for the Terps and the defensive line for all the entire Big Ten, and how I think right now the biggest difference between Maryland and some of these other juggernaut programs and some of these other big boys, when we think of the Blue Bloods, when we think of Ohio State, when we think of Michigan, when we think of Oregon, when we think of some of the best teams in the Big Ten right now, Penn State every single year is one of the biggest examples of this as well. To me, it's up front. It's the defensive and the offensive line. Maryland showed over the last couple of years that we have good enough skill positions to compete really with a lot of teams in the conference. I'm not saying we're as good at Ohio State at receiver, or we're as good as Penn State at running back, or Wisconsin at running back. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying we have shown to have plenty of talent at those skilled spots at corner, at safety, at receiver, at running back. That's not really the difference right now between Maryland and us competing to be a good team in the Big Ten. I know we're not going to reach great territory right now. We're not close to that, but being a good team, not being a Penn State or Ohio State, being a tier below that, consistently really solid in the Big Ten. You can usually count them to be a top 25 team to get into a really solid bowl game and to be one of the better teams in the Big Ten. I've always said the biggest difference to me is the offensive and defensive line. And obviously today I'm focusing more on the defensive line side of the ball, because Maryland just got a huge pickup from somebody that I think can really come in and is exactly what we needed and exactly what the Terps needed, in a place where I don't think we're great. And I think it really hurts us not being great here, because it makes it really – I don't want to say it makes it easy to beat us, but it opens up a hole for Maryland football to be able to stop teams. And it makes it really tough for Maryland to win games when your defensive line isn't great or isn't good. And I wouldn't say this defensive line's great, wouldn't say they're good. I don't even know if it's a decent group, but I'm definitely thinking the commitment of this Cam Rice kid, I think, definitely helps us go in the right direction. When you look at Maryland football's schedule this year, we don't play a lot of juggernauts. We miss a lot of the big time teams. We miss a lot of the Oregons and Ohio States. We miss a lot of those. The biggest program we probably play is Michigan, and we know Michigan has a lot to figure out, but we do play teams that if we allow them to run the football and if we allow ourselves to get gashed up front, but it's not just a running game thing. It's the pass rush. It's the run game. It's filling holes. It's being able to get some type of pressure to the quarterback to allow the offense to not just systematically easily go down the football field. That's why I think the defensive line is so important. But when you play a team like Michigan in the second to last game of the year, or when you play Rutgers November 8th, or when you play a Wisconsin September 20th, those teams are going to run the football down your throat. And if you don't have big guys up front that can stop it, they're just going to keep getting away with it, and they're going to keep doing it, and they're going to get 6 yards a carry, and there's not going to be anything you can do. You're going to lose the game. And that's why I think picking up a kid like Cam Rice is so big for the Terps. I think it's a really big commitment out of the transfer portal, and definitely a guy that I think is going to fit in to this Maryland's defensive side. He's our first addition in the spring portal, and I've been talking about it. I'm going to talk about in the next segment how we continue to need more and more guys. We're going to need guys at key position groups, and I'm going to talk about that. But this is our first spring commitment, and I really like it for Mike Loxley. I think this is exactly what we needed. I think if I named 1 or 2 position groups that I said we need guys here, it probably would have been defensive line in the linebacker room. Maybe you throw offensive line in there with losing a bunch of guys, but I think the defensive line group and the linebacker group really need some help. I think there's other position groups as well, but I do really like I really do like the commitment of this Cam Rice kid. I do think that he can really help the Terps. He played for Ohio last season, so coming from a decent program, it's not like a Big Ten or ECC or SEC type of school, but this is what Maryland's going to hang their hat on. They're going to hang their hat on getting guys like from an Ohio or from some of these programs that aren't your flashy, like you're not going to get that 5-star Alabama defensive lineman that's entering the transfer portal because he wants 500 more thousand or something like that, or didn't get to play his freshman year, but is really talented. Like, we're not going to be able to get a lot of those guys. We're going to have to get some of these niche players from a school like Ohio, and a guy that's shown a lot of potential to be a really solid player up front for Maryland football. And I think that's exactly what Cam Rice is. And I think what's important is he's 6'3", nearly 300 pounds. So I do think that he's going to be able to plug up that middle, really help us and help us fill the run games against teams that I think a lot of these teams on our schedule are going to run the ball. And you just know that's Big Ten football. That's a tradition of Big Ten football. Running the football obviously feels like it continues to get farther and farther away, that especially with adding the Pac-12 schools and some of these different things. But at the end of the day, if you can't stop the run, you're not going to be able to do anything. Maryland's going to have trouble with everyone, but also creating pass rush. We didn't create a much pass rush last year at all, and it really hurt the Terps overall being able to compete in some of these games because we couldn't get to the quarterback either. And having some interior defensive line rushment, that can really help your ability to be able to get to the quarterback. But the Cam Rice last year had 30 tackles. He had 8.5 tackles for loss and 3 sacks last game in 12 games last year. And that's really impressive, to be honest. That's a really impressive kind of number for him. 8.5 tackles for loss, like that's elite coming from your defensive tackle. That's an elite number. That's like some Aaron Donald type stuff. Obviously, he's not Aaron Donald, but for him to put up those types of numbers out of Ohio that's impressive to be able to do that. Like, you're not getting 8.5 tackles for loss just showing up every day and being a decent player. Like, you got to be a pretty good player. So I think he shows some playmaking ability, which we need. We need some guys that are going to make plays. We don't need guys that, he's going to have 10 tackles in the season, but no tackles for loss. Maybe he gets a lucky sack in there. I want some guys with some upside, some guys that might give you 5 tackles for loss, might give you 3 sacks. And I think he can do that and really blow up a game and potentially maybe not win a game for us, but be a huge difference maker throughout the year and really help us being able to win and really help this defense. Those guys like that can bail out a defense that's maybe not as talented as you want, because on a 3rd and 8, when, let's say that a team like Nebraska or somebody like that had a really good play scheduled down the field, or maybe it's Wisconsin and Billy Edwards had a really nice play down the field, but Cam Rice gets in the backfield before, even though our secondary didn't hold up. Like, things like that, you can make up for talent when you have a couple of playmakers at key position groups like the defensive line group. And then I think this is also important because of Maryland's depth at the defensive line group. Somebody said in the comments, which I do appreciate, said watch out for Ian Thomas, which I do think is something. He right now I think is one of our top defensive linemen. He also was a transfer that came in for after in the winter kind of portal season, when all that kind of happened after this season, the earlier transfer portal time. And he's a kid that I'm looking out for, big body up front that we picked up, or I'm excited about. But I do think that Cam Rice is going to also be a guy that helps us. And to get back to my point about depth, there's not a ton of depth up there. Like Ian Thomas, I'm excited about. There's Dylan Fontes. There's Dimitri Nicholas. Bryce Jenkins is a freshman. There's definitely a couple bodies up there, but it's nowhere near as deep as we want it, especially with losing Levon Johnson. I'm going to talk about that later. Some of our guys that we're losing are going to big-time programs as well, which is something else that shows it's so important to try and keep some of these guys. Even guys that we don't even think are necessarily stars are going to some big programs, and we'll talk about that later. But Levon Johnson's now off to Texas or whatever the case is, and so losing a guy like that on the defensive line, you needed to replace it. And that's exactly why this Cam Rice kid is going to be a really big pickup. I think you lose LaVon Johnson, and so you rotate that in with Cam Rice, who I think it's going to be interesting. I don't know exactly how good he's going to be just because he hasn't done it at this level, but I do think what he showed last year at Ohio makes me kind of excited for what he possibly can do in terms of his stats, in terms of his playmaking ability, in terms of his size. He does only have 1 year left, so this is it for him. If he's going to impress, if he's going to have a chance to play at the next level. So we'll see exactly what happens with this Cam Rice kid, but I do think it's a good gap fill for the year, and I think it's something that we needed, and I expect him to be one of the starters up there, and I want to see him make some plays. I haven't been able to watch any tape or anything. It's just this news is pretty recent, but I'm excited to see exactly what this kid can do because I do think a guy like this can really help us up front. And I do think this is exactly what the Terps needed up front in terms of a inside defensive lineman that can get to the quarterback some, that can get some tackles for loss, hopefully generate some push up front. I think that's exactly what the Terps are looking for. Even though we got Cam Rice, Mike Locksley still needs to do a lot more in this transfer section. We'll talk about that next. Get the supplies you need from the site made from the skilled trades at Supply House. Whether you're plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is a reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading services, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra hedge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/scam and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. So we did get a big commitment from Cam Rice in the transfer portal, but I'm here to tell you guys we're going to need a lot more to get to where we need to be and where I want the Terps to be this year. We're going to need a lot more if we want to get this roster in a better spot. There's just so many position groups to fill. I just think that getting this Cam Rice kid is nice, but we're going to need more. If we want to, we're going to need more. We expect to be somewhat competitive in the Big Ten this year. And I'm really interested to see where preseason, where all these rankings and all these media outlets have us at, because right now I see us like kind of in the bottom mix, to be completely honest with you guys. We don't have an experienced quarterback. We don't have a bunch of experienced playmakers. We never have a good offensive line. Defensively, there's not a whole lot to hang our hat on. There's not a whole lot of impact players. So I'm just trying to figure out where the production coming on. And I don't know if this is going to happen. I've said this with Maryland basketball, but we need some oomph. Like, we need a transfer that's like that kid can come in and make a big impact. And it's going to be so tough to get guys like that because the Bamas of the world, the Ohio States of the world, the Georgias, the UCLAs now with getting Nico. Don't want to try and pronounce his last name. They just can spend more money than us. And this is getting a little off topic. I saw something. I don't know if this is true or not. I saw something on Twitter saying Dion said there needs to be like a salary cap. And let me tell you, being a Maryland guy and talking about Maryland every day, a salary cap would probably help us and allow teams to be somewhat in the same vicinity in terms of being able to get guys, be able to compete with some of these other teams. But Maryland's going to need some more guys. Maryland's going to need some more. We got to add more. It's just not enough right now where we're currently at. I think this roster just has needs for basically everything. Like anything besides like quarterback, if they added a guy, I wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, they added a guy. I think there's a couple of position groups that you really want to add somebody. I think the offensive line now, like, when I really look at it, you probably want to add somebody. it really hurts losing Terez Davis and Tamaris Walker and some of these other guys. Like, that hurts. Those are guys that I thought were really going to be solid foundational piece. Like, I thought Terez Davis had a chance to be an all Big Ten player eventually. And I'll talk about that later in the last segment. But I think offensive line now, it's starting to look a lot like it did last year with Alan Heron at tackle, with Alou Bao at one of the guard spots. Richelle Perry is a transfer, of course, so we didn't get to see him last year. Isaiah Wright, I don't know where he slides in, but it's starting to look like a group from last year. Ryan Howerton, maybe Jalen Gilchrist, a really talented freshman, get some time. Without some of these depth pieces that I thought really could help us, it's just starting to look like the group that we threw out last year. And that's just me being completely honest with you guys. And we know that the group last year wasn't very good. So I think I'd really like us to switch that up, add a potential couple other guys, a couple of needed players. So that's definitely something I want to see the Terps add to. I think that's one of the more important spots, the offensive line, especially with Malik Washington, man. You don't want to say a year in college football is a rebuilding year, but if there is a rebuilding year, I can see it being this for Maryland football because consistent programs don't rebuild. There's a saying in college football, the teams like Georgia, Alabama, those teams don't rebuild, they reload. And you see it every single year because there's a new guy coming up. That's the next big thing. We're going to see it this year probably with Ohio State. If you got any chance to watch their spring game, the Julian Sayin kid looks really good. They had some wide receiver. I think Miles Graham was his name. Looks like he's the next dude. Like, those teams don't rebuild. Like, the NFL is about rebuilding. College football, if you're going to be a good team, you got to just reload. And it does feel like it could sneaky be a rebuilding year this year for the Terps. But if you want it to go in the right direction in terms of next year, maybe 2 years from now, you got to keep Malik Washington upright. You got to keep Malik Washington in a good spot. And I think the offensive line is going to be so important for that. So that is something else. And then if you want to stay in games, I think it's going to be the defense this year potentially with the young quarterback. Either quarterback we start. Who knows exactly who's going to start? I know I talked about Malik Washington having the edge in the spring, but even if Justin Martin starts, he hasn't played a ton of football either. So it doesn't really matter. But so you're going to need probably defensively to stay in the games, and there's not a whole lot defensively. Like I said before on the other day, we lose Caleb Wheatland, we lose Ken Wyatt. You need some playmakers on your linebacker room to offset some of those losses and some of those different things that you had in some of that experience that you lost. And it's just, you look at the roster, you just come away with the my takeaways. You need a bit of everything. So Mike Locksley needs to do something that is more of an NFL thing called best player available. You know, in the NFL draft, when they say draft the best player available, no matter what your position and needs are, get the best player available. Get the best player you can that's available, because more than likely, unless it's a quarterback, like I'm not in love with bringing in another quarterback. I don't really see the value in that. Or a running back, I'm kind of like, we have guys that I think can do it. Other than those two spots, like bring in the best, or like kicker, punter, bring in the best player available, because they're going to help this team somewhere. And you just need some more influx of talent. Because I'm telling you right now, what we have is probably not getting it done. It's just probably not. So we'll see what Mike Locksley ends up doing. That's my opinion on it. And you guys might disagree with it, but this team don't look great. And I'm going to continue to say that because I'm not one to lie. And it's my job to come on here and be honest. But you're going to need an influx of talent. And I think getting the best player available in the portal, instead of being like, oh, we need an offensive lineman, but there's not a ton we like, but we're just going to add this guy just because. If there's a great corner that wants to come to Maryland and he's high on your list, like, go ahead and get him. Even though our corner spot, it looks decent enough with some of the transfers that we brought in. There's no position group that I think can't be added to. So that's just kind of how I see it right now. Maryland transfers ending up in really big programs. Talk about that and what it means for the Terps next. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Gametime, you can be part of it without the stress and last-minute ticket hunting. Gametime makes it fast and easy way to get playoff tickets, even when the demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and our last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Save up to 60% off buying last-minute sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. The all-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. When you see is what you pay. Take out the guesswork of buying tickets with Gametime. The only Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I don't know if you guys got a chance to see where some of these Maryland guys are ending up, but they're ending up in some big-time programs. And I just want to start off by saying this. That's why it's really tough in the current landscape of college football for a team like Maryland to compete with some of these big-time programs. And it's almost unfair because it's guys on our roster that you wouldn't even expect to be like elite type of guys. Like LaVon Johnson, like Caleb Wheatland. It's not like if somebody like when Jayshon Barham got in the portal, I was like, okay, he's probably going to have about everything. But when other guys are going to some of these like big time programs that like haven't even been crazy like elite production players for you, it is going to be really tough if we can't even keep our role type of guys, like guys that have been decent players that are expected to make a jump into hopefully good players this year for Maryland football. If you can't even keep those types of guys, like keeping the stars is going to be hard enough. Can't even keep like a pretty good role type of guy that hasn't done anything crazy at the Big Ten level. That's when I'm starting to think it's going to be tough for Maryland football if you can't even keep that. So we've seen some big-time players end up in some big-time spots when we really look at how some of these things are starting to go down. We saw Caleb Wheatland commit to Auburn, and I know Auburn hasn't been great over the last couple of years, but that's a big-time program. Like, that's a name. That's kind of a blue blood. That's who you associate with, oh, they have a ton of money to throw around. They're going to figure things out eventually. They turn out top 10-ish recruiting classes, it feels like, every single year now. That's a team that's a big-time SEC brand program. And the Maryland to Auburn thing, I don't know what's up with that. It seems like it continues to go on every single year. I don't know what the deal is with that. I don't know what the inside connection is, but Maryland guys going to Auburn seems like a thing. We got Preston Howard, and then Preston Howard went to Auburn, and then Benaje Gote went to Auburn last year. It just seems to be like a big-time thing. And I don't know what that inside connection is, but guys will keep going to Auburn. It's probably a lot of money, so it makes sense. And you got a guy like, this is what I mean, like LaVon Johnson's been injured for the Terps. He's been a good player, but he ends up at Texas. Like, Texas is a team that might win the national championship. Like, role players, a Maryland role guy that I talked highly on him because I did think he was going to be able to be a really solid player for us and a really good piece. But Texas, like, he went from UNC and then he was decommitted, or I don't know what happened. He committed to UNC for like a second, then went to Texas. Like, that's that's a pretty big time player. So this stuff is getting weird. Like, it's strange, and we're going to continue to see it for the Terps and see exactly what happens with some of these guys. Like, a guy like Kellen Wyatt probably end up at a pretty big time program, probably have some big time looks. It's definitely interesting to look at that some of these role guys are ending up at big places. So we'll see exactly what happens for the rest of the guys that are in the portal for Maryland football. There's still guys. And then, I did want to touch on one more. Terez Davis is going to Ole Miss. Like, it's tough to win. It's tough to put it together when you got a guy on your team, a team that's already not the best looking on paper. One of your guys are going to Auburn, another one's staying in the SEC as well, going to Ole Miss, and then another guy's going to Texas. Like, you're getting 3 guys over to the SEC. Like, that's tough to hold on to. Terez Davis, I do think, is a really high-level player. I think he's going to be really good. That's why I was really disappointed when we lost him. But that's not easy for the Terps. But That's all we have for today. Thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you guys all like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps.